One of the most recognizable on-screen couples in Hollywood is Miss Kitty, Marshall, and Matt Dillon from Gunsmoke. However, the fact that they were never given the opportunity to make things official still disappoints people today. The subtle yet obvious tension between Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty was what truly caught people's attention. It's amazing that both new and seasoned viewers are still watching and talking about the answers to those questions over 50 years after Miss Kitty's last appearance on Gunsmoke in 1974, and you'll be shocked to learn that James Arness himself has the solution. Let's investigate further to learn the truth. He began to get recognition in the film industry after relocating to Los Angeles. When he was cast alongside Loretta Young in The Farmer's Daughter in 1947, that was his big break. He also landed parts in other westerns that year. In 1951, he starred in the iconic science fiction film The Thing, which significantly boosted his career. Jim secured a deal with Batjack, John Wayne's production firm, in the early 1950s. He collaborated with Wayne on 4 films during his 3 years there. Jim's biggest break came in 1955 when he was cast as Marshal Matt Dillon in the new television series Gunsmoke, thanks to John Wayne. According to the account, when CBS was transferring the show from radio to television, they initially wanted Wayne for the part. Rejecting it, he suggested Jim instead. Jim and 25 other people, including Raymond Burr, were agreed to try by CBS. Jim was a little hesitant to enter the television industry after being chosen to portray Dillon, but he made the decision to do so. Before the show was cancelled in 1975, he remained with Gunsmoke for 20 years, earning 3 Emmy nominations, making it the longest-running dramatic series in history. Additionally, he starred in 4 Gunsmoke TV films, the most recent of which was Gunsmoke Ivor the Long Ride, which was released in 1992. Jim continued to pursue parts in TV westerns after Gunsmoke. He starred in one of the greatest miniseries ever, How the West Was Won, from 1976 to 1979. Big Jim McClane, a police drama that ran in the early 1980s, was his final television show. James Arness had an interesting path as a soldier in the United States before he became renowned in Hollywood. Army. Among his many notable accolades are the Purple Heart, the Combat Infantryman Badge, and the Bronze Star. Considering that he was rejected down for a fighter pilot position in the Navy because he was too tall, it's astounding. However, his height was well utilized by the Army. They dispatched him from the landing craft first to check the level of the sea when he landed on January 22, 1944, at Anzio Beachhead in Italy. He was in the midst of some vicious battles within 10 days of his arrival. He was skulking through a vineyard on a dark night on February 1, 1944, when he heard a scream and shouts followed by a violent firefight. His lower leg was broken by some intense machine gun fire, and he was flung into the air by a nearby concussion grenade as bullets sprayed all around him. The battle was won by the soldiers, but Arness suffered severe injuries that required several surgeries to repair his leg back in the United States. He began an unexpected career in entertainment after enrolling at Beloit College and working as a radio broadcaster following his honorable discharge on January 29, 1945. In pursuit of acting role, he hitched a ride to Hollywood, where he soon befriended John Wayne. Wayne encouraged him when the part of Matt Dillon became available, and that's how Arness got well known. He played U.S. Marshal Matt Dillon, a man who enforced the law with compassion and fairness. Kitty Russell was all about love, rather than drama in the television series Gunsmoke. In 1952, Gunsmoke began as a radio program. They set out to recruit someone to protect Dodge City when they made the decision to make those thrilling stories into a television show. Fortunately, James Arness, who was 32 at the time, appeared to be the center of attention. She was portrayed by Amanda Blake, who was a real-life example of this, giving her all to her job and her love of saving cats and dogs. The only child of Jesse and Louise Neal, Amanda Blake was born Beverly Louise Neal in Buffalo on February 20th, 1929. She was descended from a Revolutionary War hero named Kate Barry, who helped warn patriots about the British and contributed to their triumph at the Battle of Cowpens which was crucial to the victory at Yorktown. She also had some Scottish and English ancestry. Beverly and her family relocated to Claremont, California, while she was a high school student. After graduating from Claremont High School, she continued her education at Pomona College, but during her time there, she became enamored with community theater, which began to consume her life, and she made the decision to pursue an acting career. She immersed herself in acting in the 1940s, participating in theater and radio appearances in Buffalo, as well as summer stock shows in New England. She pursued her acting ambitions while working as a telephone operator to support her. Beverly eventually found her way to Hollywood. MGM had enormous expectations for Jessica after discovering her and labeled her the next Greer Garson, who was a huge box office success in the 1940s. Seeking something a bit more unique, she formally changed her name from Beverly Neal to Amanda Blake. In the early 1950s, Amanda landed over a dozen film and television roles, including one in the movie Stars in My Crown. However, her big break came in 1955 when she was cast as Miss Kitty Russell, the proprietor of the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City. James Arness, who played Marshal Matt Dillon at the time, co-starred with her. Over the course of the following 19 years, they produced one of the most adored Western television programs ever. After her first divorce in 1956, Blake frequently spent her days off on the Gunsmoke set because it made her feel like she belonged there. She once remarked that it was like being around family. She made numerous guest appearances on television programs such as Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Red Skelton Show, The Dean Martin Comedy Roast, Tattletales, Match Game, and The Love Boat, while not directing many movies between 1955 and 1974. She wed her second husband, Jason Seymour Day, in 1964. However, they separated in 1967. In 1967, she married her third husband, Frank Gilbert, and remained with him until 1982. It seems obvious that viewers would envision a romance developing because both characters were so endearing. In actuality, though, their amorous aura went beyond just fan conjecture. Let's talk more about Miss Kitty and what some fans believe may have prevented the couple from becoming legally wed. She served boisterous cowboys who frequently had too many drinks and wore gaudy clothes. She was also always willing to listen to their tales of cowboy life and to give some sage counsel. This is certainly not what you would anticipate from a 1955 Sunday school instructor. In the untamed West, that was not the way a proper lady was expected to behave. A shotgun was even stored hidden behind Miss Kitty's bar. She was a fearless trailblazer who was far more fascinating than most. She was in charge of selecting and terminating her waitstaff. Her hired females were a little bolder and younger than she was. The cowboys, they had come in from the cattle trails and were rough, gruff, and a bit wild, seeking more than chat and beverages. Despite their obvious bond, Kitty and Matt never displayed public affection, a choice that the show's producers and writers decided. He really beat out a number of other candidates for the position, including Marshal Matt Dillon's radio voice actor, William Conrad, who was recommended by John Wayne. James Arness was the ideal man to bring a variety of stories to life because he was 6 feet 7 inches tall. He had experienced the world's hardships as a World War II veteran, therefore he truly understood them. Rather than excessive demonstrations of love and emotion, they preferred chemistry between the characters. Arness was a formidable lawman. He might not have been the best husband, but he was a good peacekeeper since he could handle a large horse and was a brilliant shooter. Why didn't Matt and Miss Kitty get married after 20 years of dating if they were so infatuated? Did Kitty disgrace Matt? Speaking her opinion, she was able to compete with the toughest men in drinking and shooting. Perhaps Dillon simply desired a more conventional homebody of a bride. James Arness, however, offered some insights on why Kitty and Matt in Gunsmoke never truly bonded. In his autobiography, James Arness, an autobiography, he discussed how fans frequently questioned why Matt Dillon and Kitty's relationship never worked out. Fans have frequently questioned me over the years about my character Matt Dillon's connection with Kitty and why it never seemed to go past the surface of our romance, he explained. Amanda Blake, was determined that her persona should not be tampered with. The whole thing about their relationship was more about the producer's choice than anything else, Arness explained. He emphasized that the producer made that choice because taking it a step further would make things more difficult and might make the show less popular. Even if the audience didn't agree, Arness proposed that it could be better for them if the relationship was kept under wraps and somewhat enigmatic. They felt it was more titillating to leave things up to the viewer's imagination, so they minimized our relationship, he said. Even though it was platonic, Arness and Amanda Blake's affection as performers was still visible behind the scenes of the show. Blake's portrayal of Russell was hailed by Arness as an example of the excellent casting that contributed to the program's success. Arness also referred to Blake, a fantastic buddy and actor. A common reason in the discussions was that a police officer could make enemies, and Kitty might be in danger if she was identified as Matt Dillon's lover. What then was the intended nature of their relationship? The show remained nuanced, according to Jim Burns, who penned 34 of its best episodes. We never looked into the unwritten agreement that he would go over to the Long Branch and go upstairs after the fade-out, he claimed. When Matt Dillon put up the closed for the night sign and the Long Branch closed, they never kissed, even though they teased, flirted, hugged, and left with their arms around each other. James Arness was adamant that the show's creators purposefully left Matt and Kitty's connection unclear. They did not want to make significant changes to the characters or the show's fundamental nature. They received a lot of fan letters requesting greater love development between the two, so it appears that this tactic worked. This degree of suspense was maintained throughout the series by the producers in an effort to keep viewers interested and intrigued. He thinks this strategy worked really well. The authors of Gunsmoke recognized that tensions and temptations would arise, but they were not prepared to marry Matt and Kitty off. Ainsley Pryor, a villain from Kitty's past, challenges her allegiance to Matt in Season 5 of Kitty's Outlaw, while Matt tries to aid orphan Mariette Hartley in Cotter's Girl and ends up becoming the target of her fervent affections. Claude Akins has time for Kitty in Season 8's The Way It Is. Sarah plays Anne Francis in Season 12, a former love interest of Matt's, who is now operating a weigh-in facility for criminals and is fervently hoping to win Matt back. When Kitty witnesses Matt being shot for the 11th time in Season 15's The Badge, she loses it. Essentially, the authors and studio wanted someone who could handle the agony, and he was unquestionably that person. The marshals endured stabbings, beatings, gunfire, and even one poisoning during Gunsmoke. James Arness was destined for this role, and he didn't need to make many adjustments to take it on. She moves to a different location, sells the Long Branch, and starts a business with Beverly Garland. The dynamics between Matt and Kitty appeared to change in 1973. In a plot where Matt loses his memory, Miss Michael Learn, who is most remembered for her part in The Waltons, played a romantic interest in him. As their bond grows, they exchange kisses, which is unusual for Matt. But when Matt remembers, he goes back to Miss Kitty. It's interesting to note that a TV movie 17 years later carried on same plot. The child that Matt and Miss Learned's character have together is kidnapped. Matt looks for his child with the assistance of another character. A reversal of the previous love tension between Matt and Kitty occurs when the other character shows interest in marrying Miss Learned's character. Additionally, during a stagecoach heist in one of the later seasons, Miss Kitty meets a man who is hurt while defending her. She accepts this man's proposal, which sparks an emotional discussion with Matt. Kitty talks about how much she loves Matt and their lengthy relationship. Though she eventually acknowledges the constraints of their circumstances, she wonders if their connection has the capacity to develop into something greater. Although he admits his emotions, Matt lets Kitty make the choice. Surprisingly, Amanda Blake's tenure as Miss Kitty ended that season. Now married and living in Arizona, she frequently argued with producer John Mantley and found the daily journey to be more difficult. The main point of contention between them was Blake's costumes. Miss Kitty was always supposed to look elegant, but Mantley hadn't set aside any cash for Blake's new clothes in a number of years. Mantley terminated her when she demanded a new clothing before proceeding. "It was the biggest mistake I ever made," he would later admit. James wasn't the only one who expressed an opinion on the subject. So did Amanda. Amanda Blake claims that the creators of Gunsmoke purposefully refrained from focusing on any romantic plot involving Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty. They reasoned that introducing romance would disrupt the show's Western tone and possibly alienate some viewers. Blake assured everyone that Dillon's affections for Kitty were far more profound than his relationship with his horse, making fun of the traditional Western myth that heroes are more into their horses than women. She clarified that Gunsmoke was made to appeal to a broad audience by utilizing the allure of the classic West to engage viewers of all ages. This emphasis on historical details left little opportunity for romance. Since there weren't many obvious romantic moments in the show, Blake urged viewers to envision the possible romance between Kitty and the Marshal. In 1979, the show came to an end after one more season. Arness went on to play Jim Bowie in the television movies 13 Days to Glory and The Alamo, as well as in the police drama McLean's Law and the How the West Was Won television series. Working with him on 4 Gunsmoke movies, Amy Stock noted how effortlessly the Marshal transitioned from being off-duty to becoming an action star on screen. She remembered that when she had first seen him, he had been dressed in the coat, the tennis shoes, and the Dillon hat. "We're ready for you on set," the filmmakers informed him as he sat comfortably in his chair, still wearing his tennis shoes. But in 1987, the Gunsmoke family got back together, and John Mantley brought Amanda back for the first of the TV movies. Gunsmoke returned to Dodge, which was written by Jim Burns. Then he put on his cowboy boots and removed his tennis shoes. He immediately headed for his horse, and he suddenly changed into Matt Dillon. "He was the ideal choice for the role," she remarked. Amanda Blake was in her mid-20s and ecstatic when she was cast in the Western television series Gunsmoke. She worked hard to land the role of Miss Kitty and was honored to co-star alongside James Arness, who portrayed Marshal Matt Dillon. Amanda's portrayal of Miss Kitty, the proprietor of the neighborhood saloon in Dodge City, immediately won many fans. When the program changed from black and white to color in its 1966 season, around midway through its run, her appearance really came into its own. Gunsmoke ran for 20 seasons, beginning in 1955 and ending in 1975. Amanda Blake concluded her tenure as Miss Kitty in the 19th season, whereas James Arness remained on the show for all 20 seasons as Matt Dillon. It was clear that Matt and Miss Kitty had a deeper connection throughout the series, even though the writers didn't go into great depth about it. On May 26, 1923, Jim Arness was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. In 1945, he began his remarkable career as a radio commentator in Minnesota.